Welcome back to Razmafsar TV. I'm really happy to have Ricardo De La Fuente here on our channel. First of all, let me greet Ricardo. Hi, Ricardo. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Great to see you. Thank you for having me, Manusher. It's a pleasure. Most people wouldn't recognize from my name, but I'm also half Persian. So we have this connection with Manusher, and that's how we connected initially over
Yes.
Persian culture and martial arts and history.
Yes, that's very, very nice. I was really happy to hear that you also speak Persian. We just talked Persian a bit before, and also in the last days. And I'm also happy, because of Persian background. And another thing, I'm really happy because I'm sure Ricardo knows that I also speak Spanish, and I know that Ricardo is also fluent in Spanish. So it's also another point we share, right? It's beautiful regarding that.
Yeah, we have a lot of passions, and our passions have led us to finally connect. And it's a great to connect with someone admirable, who has such a passion for preserving 5,000 years of culture. And we had a beautiful conversation. So we're glad to be here today and just harness that positive energy that we have naturally.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. Ricardo, just for our viewers to know you, to get to know you better, could you tell us who is Ricardo De La Fuente?
Yeah, sometimes even at my age, I'm at 35, I'm still trying to find out who I am. But but if I may start, I was born in San Diego in California. My father is a Mexican American, and my mother's Persian. She left after the revolution, like many of the stories of the Persians that left in 1979. They had met through my uncle, and my father met my mother for the first time, and he says, "How do you go about to date someone from the Persian culture?" And my mother said, "Do you know the difference between gold and silver? It's 1/10 of a second. So if you want to date a Persian lady, you have to be 100% in." 6 months later, they got married. So yeah, growing up in San Diego, having both the Mexican and the Persian culture, our breakfast is very complicated. We have the sangak with feta, which is very traditional with the chai, and then we have the chilaquiles on the Mexican side, and then we have the waffles and pancakes, on the American. And so having breakfast with my grandfather, my mother, my sisters, we'd have 3 or 4 different cultures just at the dining table, just to start the day.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so I was born in San Diego. I was raised there. And then a major turning point is around 9/11. Actually, I was in the plane heading to Switzerland, and I didn't know that 9/11 happened until 3 weeks after, because I studied in Switzerland, and they put me in the French section, and I didn't speak any French. And every day we would pray for 5 minutes, and I asked, why do we pray? And they said, "Oh, the Twin Tower." And I said, "Oh, Eiffel Tower? No, Twin Tower." I didn't even know what the Twin Towers were. And then 2 weeks later, my sister told me what happened. And then I said, "Oh I can't believe this just happened." And so I lived in Switzerland for 5 years. And in one of the schools I went to, actually, I think you would appreciate this, was a school where the Shah of Iran went to. So I discovered it one day in our yearbook. They had at the time, he invited all his alumni. And one of his friends from that school was Aga Khan. He recently passed last week. He's an alumni of the school, and they used to go skiing together. So I don't know if you knew this, but the Aga Khan skied in the Olympics for Iran because
Do
he
you
was
know
good
how
friends with the
when I
Shah.
found it out, you're going to be very, very surprised how life is. And I admit, 2 days ago, do you know how I found it out? A friend of mine said, "Oh, you gave a speech at Aga Khan University in London." I said, "Yeah, they invited me." "Oh, he passed away." I said, "Yeah, I heard about that." And he said, "Did you know he was in Olympic team for skiing for Iran?" I said, "No." And I found out 2 days ago. And look at the coincidence. Now you mention it to me. I just found out 2 days ago. Really, I didn't know that. I
Well,
hadn't
I
known
wasn't.
that, right? Mhm.
Well, there was a half Mexican, half Persian on the ski team. Probably the same ski team as the Aga Khan. And one day I pick up a trophy, and we had a sports award ceremony. And then I saw HM Reza Pahlavi. I didn't know what HM meant, so I researched and then His Majesty, and it was very interesting actually. Being in Switzerland, there was this in Montreux. There's a Palais Oriental, which is a lot of, I think it's some descendant or of the Shah that has a Persian restaurant there, and we'd go there and have connect to our roots, especially when you live abroad, you want to connect to your roots. You miss, what you cook at home, and you appreciate it more. And so, yeah, I was in Switzerland until I was 16, moved back to the States. I'm currently right now in Uruguay, and my father started to invest here and move here part time since about 20 years ago, so 2004. So every year I'm here between a week to 3 months. And over time, I've actually spent more time here than in my father's homeland of Mexico. So when I go to the World Cup, we watch, we support, USA, Mexico, Uruguay, and I see Iran. And then my friend asked me once, so if Mexico and Iran plays, who do you support? I say, I'll celebrate either way. And actually, I was recently in the World Cup in 2022 in Qatar, and Iran and USA were playing against each other. And so my friends had both jerseys, and they were ready to celebrate either way. They said, "We're Persian at the root, but the branches are American." And it was quite, I think the World Cup is such a beautiful energy to have all these different countries in the stadiums. And in one of the games, I think it was Mexico versus Saudi, and Mexico was winning, and I made a friend. Actually, I was passing in the halftime, and he said, "Oh, where are you from?" And we started chatting, and he says, "Can I get you something?" "No, I'm fine." And similar in the Persian culture of tarot, I was like, "No, I'm really fine. I had a lot to eat. I'm okay." Since I didn't tell him anything, he bought me one of everything, and he gave it to me, and I said, "What am I gonna do with this?" So I connected with him, and I wanted to reciprocate. So I was calling him every day to invite him for a coffee because I felt bad. And I said, "Wow, what a beautiful thing." Usually people are fighting between two teams. Here, my team was winning, his team was losing, and here he invited me. And it just shows the beauty of friendship and across different cultures. And I think you shared a very interesting story yesterday that I'm still reflecting on. Maybe you can share when you went to Mongolia.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, when I was in Mongolia, it was different. I was invited to go there, and then I taught Razmafsar, Persian swordsmanship, wrestling. So, I just said, okay, we train like every day. And I just say to her, and I said, okay, these guys are strong guys. So when you go to Mongolia, the first striking things, you cannot generalize. There are tall people, strong people everywhere, in every country. It's a prejudice. Those people are shorter. Even go to China today, you see many tall Chinese, strong Chinese. But one thing which is striking for me was how tall and strong Mongolians are. Many are, right? So I went there and I trained with them. We wrestled, we did swordsmanship and different things. And one day, after no, third day, 2 or 3, I think, I don't remember. So I connected with them, and then two of them came to me, very strong guys, and came to me and said, with tears in their eyes, really, I will never forget. And they said to me, Dr. Khorasani, they always called me Dr. Khorasani. They didn't want to call me Manucher, all of them, Dr. Khorasani, Dr. Khorasani. And they refused. They just, okay, let them be. What should I do? And oh, you know like how it is in the United States. We always go by first name with professors. Now I'm used to it in Germany because, I have to force my students to call me Manucher because in Germany, they always call you Professor Khorasani and so. So then they refused. But Germans accept if you offer, but they refused. Okay. And then one day, tears in the eyes, came to me, said, Dr. Khorasani, you are a very nice man. And I just said, oh, thank you very much. So I'm just trying to use my intercultural sensitivity. But you really are. Yeah, you are nice as well. No, you are. That's a difference, or something like that different. Okay. And I was just, God, what the hell is going on? Right. They said, he would like to apologize to you. And I just said, apologize? Why? Yeah, for what Chinggis Khan did. And then, Chinggis Khan? And then, what did Chinggis Khan do? Yeah, in 12th century, we just came to Persia. We killed so many people. We want to apologize for what we did. I first thought, okay, look, they're martial artists, right? They're fighters, right? We are not at the university and so, right? But that's always, I say always, university and research gives me one life. Another life, which is connected, is consulting. Normally I do for law firms, for ethics and so. But another word is always martial arts. There are, of course, educated martial artists, but few of them are that educated, right? Let's put it that way. And so different, but very hard, deep of their heart. And then the guy goes, you know, what he did was unbelievable. And now we see how nice we are. We feel bad and guilty. And they hugged me, kissed me, and said, we are so sorry for what happened back then. And, I didn't know what to say because I said, God, now I realize Asia has long memory, right? And I say this sentence again, Asia has long memory, because, I realized it as well. This story, as you said, to share, we're going to talk about it. And it's beautiful because, I'm Persian background and I was educated in Germany, US, and Spain, mostly in US and in Germany, but also I studied 1 year in Spain and studying different languages. But I realized I'm proud of my Persian heritage, live and breathe for Persian culture. But I'm Western educated, Ricardo. Do you understand what I mean? So even if when I go to Iran, I see, for example, okay, this is our project. We do this, and we not go to there, and they look at me and they do tarof. Yeah, okay, that's enough. And then I realize, although I have Persian roots and background, still sometimes, although they're doing tarof, you just override their cultural norms. Do you understand what I mean? Because you're not into that element. Do you understand what I mean, Ricardo?
You have to adapt, in
Yes,
Persian culture. If you ever go with a Persian and when the bill comes,
yes,
typically you
yes,
fight and it gets pretty aggressive. One time I had 10 credit cards. I took each one of them out and my friend took all 10 and then he had 11 credit cards. So he managed to pay the bill and we were, and it's such a beauty, the generosity. I really subscribe to that idea. The more you give, the more you get.
yes,
And there's just this generosity,
yes,
especially hospitality. Persians and my mom and my grandmother, God bless them, they've taught me that. So when you have somebody come to your home, you put your guests before
yes,
you offer them whatever you have, and that's very typical if you go into a Mexican or Persian household. They love to share what they have with others,
yes,
but yeah, going back to the same question, who am I? Well, it's a very complicated question. It could be very easy. My name is Ricardo De La Fuente, but when you look at, my from the day I was born to how my parents met, and then I love history, and recently I've been going deep into Persian history and Aztec and Mayan and Spanish history, and then I did my DNA test actually, and I was trying to trace my family tree, and it was just so interesting how different historical events impacted to think about how many people had to go before me for me to be alive today. Just an incredible if you think it's just incredible to think the journeys that my ancestors took, and for me to be here today, it's mathematically impossible. I mean, it's crazy, to survive all these wars and travel. And usually there's some major thing, and I think when the Ottomans sacked Constantinople, they blocked the Silk Road and the trade wasn't happening. So the Spanish and the Portuguese were looking for new trade routes. And I think that's how, into something that happened halfway across the world, the age of exploration, then my ancestors ended up going to Mexico. Some of them are Aztecs, some of them are mostly are Spanish. And then on the Persian side, my mom, for many, very, very much Persian, and the revolution happened, and my family left and dispersed around the world, and now I'm here. If it hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. So,
Very good,
um,
Ricardo. This is really lovely because we are going to talk about these different cultural elements. Because I sincerely believe, and I always say that you need to experience intercultural differences on your own skin, then you can understand exactly the mechanics of that. This is extremely important. So you will have this experience. Ricardo, let me just ask you about your education. Could you tell us about your education a bit?
well, I really, my one very fundamental, I'm very curious, and I believe that anyone is a beginner. So I'm never afraid to start anything. So I believe I'm a jack of all trades and I'm a master of none, but I'm very good at languages, it turns out. My dad and I usually argue because he's very good with languages, with bad numbers like that. Actually, I'm pretty good with numbers too. You just like to say that narrative. But, I studied in Switzerland, which was a major impact in the US. I studied abroad in China, have my bachelor's from Georgetown. And I've done a lot of different programs in executive education at Harvard, Harvard Business School, Harvard Kennedy School. Funny enough, you'd appreciate this because, having a name Ricardo De La Fuente, I'm a very good negotiator, but I think I inherited that from the Persian side. So when someone was negotiating with me, all of a sudden she said, "Wow, he was so nice. He's such a nice person. He's so appreciated." And then when they did the results, I ended up being on the top of the class, and then they were kind of upset, and I felt bad. So uh, I think so. And I'm currently doing my executive MBA at Oxford. And there was a funny joke that now I could kind of say it. They say there's three moms, and they're three Persian moms, and they're very proud of their sons. And one says, "Oh, my son has a MA from Harvard," and the second mom says, "And my son has a PhD from Oxford," and the third mom says, "And my son has a BMW from Germany." So, so that's such a funny thing. But for me, education is a lifelong journey. I try to learn, from lectures. I research online now. Thanks to AI, it's really opened up my mind and the possibilities of learning. I look at it as a thought partner. So I have any curiosity on any subject or the evolution of something, and in the mornings I ask it a lot of questions. And I'm currently serving on the California Community Colleges Board, which is focused on access, affordability, and equity. Actually, my first, I used to never really mention this, but my first class I ever took at college was actually at a community college when I was in high school. I took Intro to Psychology. I remember I was 10 minutes late, and I called my cousin Cyrus. He passed away, God bless his soul, and I said, "Cousin, I don't know, I'm late. They usually in high school, they don't let you in." And he said, "Just go, everyone's late, don't worry." And I arrived, and I was just on time, even though it was 10 minutes past the hour. But yeah, I have a very dear friend, Alessandro, who's half Persian, half Italian. And he said, "Ricardo, what is the greatest education experience you've ever had?" And I had a very important meeting recently. Um, and I was thinking, do I meet this person or do I go to my matriculation? Matriculation is something that's very in Oxford very important. That they create a ritual that connects past, present, and future scholars. So you go to this beautiful, hundreds of year old hall that's just beautiful, and you have this ceremony, and they say in Latin, and it's really interesting to connect the past, present, and future. To think that this ritual is kind of going to your culture. These rituals kind of create a culture of how to connect people from past, present, and future. So I went to it, and it was just, he says, "You never know." he says, and everyone told me you should go to the business meeting. It's very important. Who knows if you'll get it again? And I talked to this friend of mine, and he values education. He says, "You never know. Might have a conversation that inspires you." And he says one of the greatest moments that he had that was the wine and cheese that we had after he defended his PhD thesis at MIT. So I decided to go to the matriculation. Thankfully, I managed to get the meeting that I needed a month later, and it was even better than expected because the other meeting was many people. I managed to meet the person one on one, and it's just I'm very, very grateful for the opportunities that education, and it's not easy. I remember I have applied, and sometimes you don't get in, but I never give up. I always think that you can try and again. I'm very persistent. I remember there was one program I had got waitlisted, and I said, well, then I have a chance. So then I doubled down, and I didn't get in. I applied one more time, got waitlisted. So I said, you know what? I'm going to apply the next 10 years, and every year I'm going to become a better leader until they'll be glad to have me. And then the third time was the charm. I got in. So I never really, I never lose enthusiasm. Rejection is part of life, and I'm very, very persistent. And I think that's given my, the strong cultures that I have behind me. I'm very passionate about languages. So growing up, we had English, Spanish, and Farsi at home, but I listened to Farsi, but I never learned it formally, which annoyed me. So when I went to Switzerland, I learned French, and then I had really my earliest crush was learning Italian, and then I had a crush on an Italian girl, so I learned Italian. So I signed up, and it was very similar. And then I was in Switzerland. There's a lot of Russians from and they're always speaking Russian, and you learn a few bad words. Of course, they're called mat. Apparently, there's a dictionary in Russia for all the bad words. So then I studied for 2 summers Russian, so I can understand them. And then eventually I moved back to the US. I started learn Farsi just so I could understand my family. And fast forward a few years, I was running for Congress in downtown LA, and I had an interview with the Persian TV. My Farsi is basic. It's not good enough to do a 40-minute interview, but here am I practicing to do a 2-minute speech, and said, Ricardo John, this is a 40-minute live interview. My best friend, his name is Sam. We went to school together. He's also Persian. He was in the audience just laughing and having the time of his life. Luckily, we switched to English, so I was saved. Yeah, languages is something very beautiful. The one thing I do when I'm traveling, and I think we both have this in common, is I love to try the local food. And I try everything as much as I can. Even if it doesn't look so good, I try it because you might be surprised. I learned the language, so I usually start. My goal is minimum 20 hours before I go to a new place that I don't know the language. If I have the time and I know my schedule and ahead in advance. And then the third, if possible, I try to learn the martial art.
Very nice. Could you tell us, if you wish to share, could you tell us about your no, first of all, why did you choose Oxford? You went to Harvard and now you just switched to British education. Why did you choose Oxford?
Well, I did an executive course there for a week, and I really enjoyed it. And I love that history, and it is really an intellectual's paradise. I mean, the libraries, they just inspire you to read, and there's so much history. And I wanted to learn something different, from a different angle, get a different perspective. And it's given me, new friends and new opportunities and a different perspective. And I just wanted to see what they were seeing on the other side of the pond, right? And
Yes.
something that I've noticed is the British education, when you're given an exam, you actually don't put your name, you put a number so they can't, you're anonymous, and then you do a double blind marker. The other thing which I found was interesting, which I was mentoring a kid the other day, I was explaining him the British system for the American. And the US, an A is 90 and above, a B is 80 and above, and a C is 70 above. Anything below 70 is not so good. In the UK, if you get a 71, you're in honors or distinction, and a pass is 50. And the feedback isn't personalized. It's as a group. So they talk about the whole class as a whole, who did, and anonymously, so they don't give personalized feedback. which I have my thoughts about that. But the experience to study abroad, I've studied in Switzerland, China, UK, and the US, and every time I study, it opens up your mind. You see a different points of view. You see how people view the world or how people view the United States. I think we had that conversation the other day where we talked about how sometimes you'll talk with someone from abroad and they will literally relate the whole country, hundreds of millions of people, to one person, whoever the president is at the time.
Yeah.
So right now,
In this, the way I teach my students at Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, when I teach them intercultural management, I give them an anecdote. Maybe it's interesting. Let's say, okay, because we are in Germany, I give them German. I mean, although our university is very international, I mean, almost half of them are international students. But let's just say because we are in Germany, I give an example from Germany. It could be US, it could be Spain, anywhere. So there's a German guy, I just gave him, and he says, we Germans do not like that. And I said, what did you say? We Germans. Are you Germany? Yeah, but I'm German. I know, but are you Germany? And the guy said, yeah, but we Germans. No, no. What's your name? Thomas. Say, I, Thomas, think this way. You're not Germany. Stop it. You know, you know what I mean? Why do I teach my students that? Because once we start from ourselves to say, I'm not the country, then you also do not reduce the person you talk to. For example, I just say, it's a very strange thing, but I just say, why stereotypes happen? This is something which we need to work on. And this is something for us very interesting. Why do people generalize? And this also happens that they reduce whatever happens to, whatever, to certain periods. And Persian culture, we have like 7,000 years of culture.
My dear friend Bosley is from Syria and he lives in New York, and he says, Ricardo, you're as American as apple pie. It's like, you really think so? You really think I'm that American? He's like, yeah, except the apples are from Persia and the crust is from Mexico. But I always find it diversity. I think there is a strength in diversity. Ronald Reagan once said, you can go to China, but you can't become Chinese. You can go to India and not become Indian, but you can come to America and you become an American. And he's saying the strength in America is his diversity, that anyone from around the world, and you get the best from around the world to come. And that's what he said is America's competitive advantage. Yeah. Look, I was talking with Rashid the other day, and I'm in a small country right now, but if I want to have Persian food, there's no Persian food anywhere to be found. And but what I like about the States is a lot of cities you can go and same day have Persian food, have Japanese, the next day Thai, and that diversity is, I think, exciting. I think having curiosity and compassion to other cultures. Culture is it's a beautiful thing. It's these traditions and rituals, and some cultures have different views on what is right and what is wrong. Some have a different way of doing things, and it's nothing. There's no right or there's no wrong. I think it's. I was very lucky because my education exposed me to this diversity, and I was excited. I've been to 97 countries as of a month ago. I'm soon to reach my 100th country, and each country I fall in love with it. I fall in love with the people, the country, the food. I was just in Vietnam. We had egg coffee in the morning. I had the banh mi's, and then you see the impact of the French when they were in Southeast Asia, because they banh mi's. The Vietnamese actually perfected the baguette, believe it or not. I think their baguette is even better than the French. And then they created the banh mi.
Are you serious?
Yeah, the French would be upset with me, but hey, people take it to the next level.
No, just thinking they have baguette in Vietnam makes me laugh. That's the reason. I've never been to Vietnam. That's why I'm laughing.
Right? And they have Vietnamese coffee, which was inspired by the French press, and it's strongest coffee I've ever had, and it's very good. And now it's evolved, and beautiful country. It's that's what excites me, is that and then there's certain countries, for example, are maybe not so prevalent. So I was in Russia during the World Cup 2018, and you try Uzbek cuisine, and I tried plov. And then I was reading, I was like, this reminds me a little bit of back home. I don't know why, but and then I
Yes.
was researching the Persian Empire and then the connection to Uzbekistan. And at some point, it was part of the Persian Empire. At some point, there was an Uzbek ruler that came to Iran, even though I like to prefer the first narrative
You
that when
know,
I with my Uzbek friend. But
nice. I was, it's very interesting to talk about. When I was, I also worked with colleagues from St. Petersburg, Hermitage. So I was in Moscow, and then I was also in St. Petersburg. So I think we were in Moscow. So my Russian colleague, is also into weapon analysis, invited me to a nice restaurant, and we were there. And then I said, oh, it's a Central Asian restaurant. I said, what does it mean, Central Asian? Because there's different countries. I said, yeah, they have different foods. So the guy came to me, he was always looking at me like that, the waiter. Very nice and really smile. And why is he looking at me like this? So he went back and forth. So I was talking to this Russian gentleman. I always said, oh, Manusha, I'm sorry, my English is not good. And because he was always searching for his word. I said, no problem, no problem. And then he came to me and then he said, oh, I told him that you're Persian background. I said, oh yeah, that's the reason he's smiling. That's nice. And then he came to me and talked in Persian, fluent Persian to me. Hi, how are you? I was so shocked because I didn't expect him to speak Persian, right? And he said, oh, nice to see you. And here, so I'm from Tajikistan. So the guy was from Tajikistan. And it was so lovely. I said, oh God, I'm sitting now in a restaurant in Moscow. And he said, oh, so you work here? I said, no, this is family business. I said, oh, yeah, my parents, everyone is from Tajikistan. And they, yeah, why do you call it Central Asian? So, yeah, because if you just say Tajikistan, the people who like Tajik food come here. But if you say Central Asian, then everyone comes. Uzbek food, Turkmenistan. So very clever marketing strategy he had. Very nice. So I don't know why I was even shocked because I didn't expect it from Russia because I didn't know anything about Russia. I have to be honest with you, nothing. So it was the first time. So, and then there I understood, oh, okay, multi-ethnic, there are many people. Okay, Tajikistan is not part of Russia. Back then it was Soviet Union didn't exist. But still, even Russia itself, as you know better than I do, is a very multi-ethnic, multilingual country for centuries, which makes Russia very fascinating, right? A point many people forget, right?
yeah,
Due to
I went to Philippines and I started doing martial art, the Eskrima Kali, which is actually a stick fighting with knives and stuff, and which I'm sure you probably know a lot about. But I started training it in Los Angeles, so I went to Philippines, and then I decided, well, what am I gonna do? Let me learn Tagalog. So then I'm learning a few words of "Kumusta ka," and I'm like, wait a minute, this sounds like "Cómo estás?" And then I was like, why is there so many Spanish words in this language? How is it connected? Why? Uh, and then all of a sudden, I failed to do my research. The Spanish were in Philippines for so many years, so as a result, now modern Tagalog has a lot of Spanish words in it. And then I was meeting a lot of Spanish Filipino, and I had no idea before going to the country, and it's very interesting. I was learning Swahili. I went to go climb Kilimanjaro with a friend of mine and a few friends, and when I learned Swahili, all of a sudden for money, pesa, which means money in Hindi, and then they started having some words in Farsi, and I was just shocked. I think if you see all the migration, and even in Spanish and Arabic have so many words: camis, camisa, aceituna, aceituna. There's so many influences that people need to find the commonality. They just have to have a little bit of creativity, and they'll find it. You know.
yes, absolutely.
Uh,
Ricardo, before we move on, I would like to ask you another thing. We talked about different languages, beautiful experiences. Do you have, first of all, a favorite, or tell us three favorite countries you traveled to, if I may ask? Can you even do
oh,
that?
that's very, very difficult. Uh, I love every country I go to, but I don't know why. I love Italy because I love the food, and I don't know. I feel like they're the Persians of the mid of Europe or something. They're just very warm, and they love to have big dinners with a lot of people, and I think Italy is very I always love Italy. I went to South Africa, and I thought that was a very beautiful country. I was there for the World Cup and learned a lot, and the views and the nature and the safari was incredible. Uh, Vietnam, I was just there, very, very interesting. Fast growing, but I don't really have so many favorites. But every I try to make every country I go my favorite. I really go all in. I
Mm,
love to try the local food.
mm,
I love to connect with people.
mm.
Uh,
Um,
but it depends for what as well, right? One is,
mhm,
are you going more for history, for culture, for
mm,
food?
mm,
Would I live there?
mm,
So that's a tough question. But I did meet somebody that went to every single country in the world, and one of his favorite countries, I was shocked, and I said, "Are you saying this because you know that I'm half British?" He says, "No, Iran." He said that Iran was one of his favorite countries, and he said the generosity of the people. He had a tour guide that took him all around. He tried to pay and refused to take any money. He was just proud to show his
yes.
history and culture. Um, and he loved New Zealand as well. He said New Zealand. He said Iran, and he loves Africa. So he said just the safaris in general. I was recently in Ethiopia, which I thought was interesting, and I tried their local cuisine, and they have like the injera, and I just saw the whole country and how it's growing so fast. Um, but the seven wonders of the world. I'm missing the Taj Mahal. I haven't been to India yet, but I'm
Mm,
missing that. But I've been to the Great Wall, Christ the Redeemer, the Acropolis in Athens, Petra. Petra is beautiful, a beautiful, beautiful place. The pyramids, the Colosseum. I think my passion for history. I watched the movie Gladiator, and after that, I told my dad they had a trip. My family had a trip to Rome. I said, I want to come with you. It's like, no, you have school. No, but you have to take me with you. So I convinced my parents to take me with them. And I told my dad, now I want to go to the Colosseum. And my dad was happy that I was interested in history. And then I had my first history book. And actually, when I was a kid in school, we used to read books. And I chose to read the 100-page history books because I can finish them during the hour of reading I was obliged to do. And I learned something. So when I went to history class, I was, you know, fact checking sometimes the professor, which I don't think the professor appreciated it, but it was pre Google. So,
yes, that's true. Another thing I would like, if you would like to share, you ran for the Congress to become a senator. Am I correct, Ricardo?
yeah, I ran for Congress to become a congressman and I ran for Senate. But my first time I ran in downtown LA and kind of connecting. If you ever been in downtown LA, there's a lot of cultural diversity in such a
Yes,
small amount of space. You have Chinatown was
yes.
part of my district, so I actually translated my posters in English and then in Mandarin, so I can send it through, and you can actually see the voters of how many voters ask for their ballot in Mandarin or Korean. I also wrote it in Korean, so I got a translator and I did it in Korean. So I had Koreatown, Chinatown. I had the Mexican Americans and then there was a Filipino town was nearby, Thai town was nearby. Didn't really touch the district, but it was very interesting, and we had the homeless situation, you had the gangs. So at 26 years old, I was running for Congress and I had all these challenges that I was seeing firsthand that some of them you don't really see as much in San Diego or other places that I've lived. Uh, you know, um, there was a bakery actually. If anyone's ever in downtown, it's called Homeboy Industries. Or if you're ever in LAX, there's a place where they sell the bread. And Homeboy Industries is a pastor who recruited former gang members to try to get out of the gangs. And I met this gentleman who uh, I met him when I was, putting in my paperwork, and he was a former gang member who has a nonprofit that helps kids get out of gangs. And he says, "Why do people join a gang?" He's like, "Because you want to be part of something. They're lacking that things at home and you want to be part of a community." And they talk about the values that you don't have at home, like love, respect, loyalty. Although what they call the OG manipulate these young kids, and sometimes when they're about to get in trouble, they throw the young kids under the bus and they get arrested. And then you see the homeless situation, which is just really out of control. uh, all across California. I think a lot of people see it, and it's just a shame. I mean, are we not humane enough to take care of everyone? The world's greatest superpower, California, is the fourth largest economy in the world, and we have one of the largest homeless populations. It's really sad, and I feel like and the politicians, they don't even like to talk about it. So I think it's very important to have common sense to get it done, and even talk about it. I mean, you haven't really seen any of the politicians talking about the homeless situation, but everybody on the ground in the communities are, because it's everywhere. Um, but that experience I lost. I put it all on the line. It was very difficult. There was 23 people. I really went door to door, and that connection, that magic, was beautiful. It exposed me. You get an education within itself just by talking to so many different people, and I think that's why politicians they have information. Information is king. If you talk to so many people, you'll have more information. Um, and it is hard to run for office, and it's a shame. There needs to be more effort made to bring talented individuals, because some of the people there, you scratch your head and say, what are they doing there? You know.
In which sense, Ricardo?
Well, so I just think a lot of them are not necessarily qualified, and they've been there for a long time. There's no term limits, and people vote for the same people, and it takes a lot of money to run. To run for Congress, you need $1 million to $2 million in order to win if you're like a new entry. And I think it shouldn't be about who is able to raise the most. It should be having the right person in the right seat. And unfortunately, I feel like we have the wrong people in the wrong seat at the wrong time. They say business is like a bus. You have to have the right people on the bus, right people off the bus. Most importantly, the right people in the right seats. And I think government, it has the wrong people on the bus and the wrong seats. And so, and a lot of people now, social media and stuff, people want to chase profit over service. And I think the toll it takes personally and privately, you have to have really thick skin. You're going to have trolling, you're going to have threats, you're going to have all types of things. People who don't even have never met you are going to come with an assumption and attack you. But my grandfather told this to my dad, and my dad always shares. He says, if it's good news or bad news, as long as they're talking about you, it's all good news, because you're important enough for them to care. Yeah, look, I'm going to share with you one about Kobe Bryant. He says, learn to love the hate, embrace it, enjoy it. You earned it. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Everyone should have one about you. Haters are good problems to have. Nobody hates the good ones. They hate the great ones. So, I think more people need to kind of use their talent, and at some point need to serve their country and serve the government and have great people. It's funny. I was reading that in Singapore, they pay their ministers as much as CEOs in America, because they want the best person in that seat. And now, I'm not saying that, public officials should be paid a fortune. That wouldn't make sense for the budget, but just the idea that they're willing to make the effort to bring the best people. I think there's a lot of political polarization, and I think people need empathy. They need understanding. And I think it starts with the basics, just being open-minded, open to learning new things. I think traveling, learning languages, trying new different cultures is a way to open up your mind and your heart to connect with people from diverse backgrounds. And, at the end of the day, I think everyone wants, at the core, I think universally, there's certain values that all people that inhabit this earth share. It's not so different.
Ricardo, did I understand you correctly? You also ran in the state of Florida. Did I understand it correctly?
Yes. So I ran in Texas, I ran in Florida, I ran in California. California, I just discussed the issues, but we'll jump over to Florida. Florida is a whole different mindset. And the other thing that they have is, in the media, as kind of going back to the earlier conversation, they put Latinos under one branch, not realizing that there's a Latino Mexican American, there's the Colombians, there's the Venezuelans, there's the Brazilians. They put this whole branch, and they're all very different, politically as well. So in Miami, you find a lot of Latinos are more conservative because they left left-wing governments. So they were trying to oppose anything that's even close to left-wing, and they're more conservative. Um, and Miami is a fast-growing city. It's really become a global city in the last 20 years. I visited quite frequently and ran. It's really a beautiful city. I did my first marathon there, my first half Ironman there. So I always have these special moments there in Florida. The other place I ran was in Texas, and over there, what you call a Texas Democrat outside of Austin, they say, well, those are not Texans. Those are people that moved outside of from different states to move to Austin. But if you talk to a Texas Democrat, the difference is they're like a California Republican. They're pro guns and pro life. So I was over, and I've never seen so many guns in my life. And one day I was putting up a sign, and someone says, oh, they were getting in a fight, and I looked like a boyfriend and girlfriend. And I said, ma'am, are you okay? He's like, no, he's trying to rob me. Guy jumps out, shoots 2 warning shots, and all of a sudden has the guy pinned. And I told the guy, we got to go and let's call help. Let's call 911. And so luckily no one died, but they caught the culprits. But yeah, that was just a different experience, living in Texas. But people were very warm, very, a lot of really great values. They love, family, faith. They love their freedoms. They love being in nature. It was really fast. It's very. It's a state that's growing very fast. I didn't know this, but could you imagine that I was in Austin and I opened the window one day and there was a snowstorm?
In Texas?
I didn't know it snowed in Texas. And then I was in Austin, and one day I said, I told my wife, it's snowing. And then I was actually during the famous snowstorm when the whole city got shut down. And that's another example of, they were unprepared. They didn't have a snowplower. So then I was driving, people started, more accidents started to happen. And then the whole city just got shut down. And you're thinking, how can this happen? That's a long story, but yeah, at the moment, I'm serving the largest education system in the country. And I'm learning a lot, and I think education, if you lead with education, it increases the possibility to advance the society as a whole. Education, I think, is very, very important. And otherwise, then we have a lack of understanding, a lack of further polarization, but let's see. I think at the end of the day, my heart is in service, in serving others. I think, and it comes back to the question of culture. My mom and her generosity, my grandmother always being so generous with anybody who comes through our door, comes to our home, and service has that same ethos.
That's right.
What would you say is the greatest lesson you learned from your parents?
Sharing, definitely. Sharing and education. For my parents, my late father died 2 years ago, unfortunately, and for my mom as well. Both of them, education is very important. Education and then sharing education. I mean, education in our family was a major cornerstone of our family, as you said that. Absolutely. Very, both my parents also highly educated. I don't look at it that way. To me, writing is life mission, because this is for me not a work. I do it for Persian culture. And I have so many things. For example, I have manuals on horse classification. Horse is also back then part of militaria. Different types of horses. What can I use for that? But it's 120 pages again. How can I translate that? If you have then, is it even interesting? Yes, it is. The reason is I do not delete. For example, I translated Persian manuals. I think I told you 8 to cite one of my books, and it was about lingua franca there was Persian in most areas, especially Mughal India, not only there, in others as well. Some republics there or some regions, and I say republics, some regions there, kingdoms.
Yeah, but what's the oldest manuscript you've ever read?
Okay. I have Old Persian. These are not many because I looked through them in cuneiform. Middle Persian, Avestan, because in Avesta there are lots of weapons as well. They talk about different weapons. But most things in Persian are from Neo-Persian, which is from the 10th century. starting from Shahnameh, and I did extensive research on Shahnameh, Book of Kings of Ferdowsi, and then I went through different manuals you can take a look at.
What's the biggest lesson you learned from the Javan Mardi?
You know, if you, I was talking with a. That's very good. Okay, Javon Mardi, has different principles. Is Rasti, is being righteousness, is courage, and many things like lots of things it shares with Japanese Bushido or Chinese or many other things. Lessons of Jawal Mahdi, I think, many people talk about Jawal Mahdi and they don't know what Jawal Mahdi means. For example, to betray someone. But the same people come and say, one of the most important in Jawal Mahdi, in my opinion, is not loyalty, which is one part of it. One of the most important is not Rasti, righteousness. I think the Persian Jawal Mahdi, the most important thing, which still you find in Iran, is Haqq Namak, the right of salt, the right of sharing salt. For example, if you invited me to your home, I will be your namakgir, means my hands, my body, my life, there is a bond through salt with you because you invited me. And if I betray you, this is the worst thing which can happen. So this haqq namak, I'm sure maybe you heard that in Persian. Someone come to you, people back then who believed in it, they were very selective in accepting invitations, in sharing salt with you. They say, namakgir shomam. For example, this is something in Persian Jamal Mahdi, which is very special. You go to courage, we share it with Japanese. If you go to loyalty, we share it with the Bushido. But if you go to haqq namak, it's very Persian, very Persian. Sharing salt with someone. For example, I can tell you something. There are many Iranian wrestlers, right, who refuse to wrestle and fighting it. Wrestling, we're not talking MMA. Wrestling. Wrestling is a tough game, you know that. But still, they don't want to wrestle competitively. They say, why? He said, namagirim. They shared salt. You understand? They don't want to do that, right? They know each other so well. They ate each other's food. So there is this bond in Persian Jamal Mahdi, I would say, is very important. So these type of things, I would like to look at them as the whole thing, not only separately. Many people come and talk about, there are in some Persian manuscripts, there are some of them are about talisman. And sometimes people, leave them out. I think it's completely wrong. For example, in this Persian manuscript in India, Stars of Sciences, part of it is about weapons. He wrote in Persian. He says, before the battle, listen, you're going to love that. Go and try to reflect the stars and the moon on your blade and look at the reflection. If the reflection, this star connects with that, you shouldn't go to the battle. Of course, there's superstition. We know this. I know it's superstition. I know that, but I still translate. A colleague of mine who translated this left out before everything which was like this because it's superstition. I retranslated the whole thing again with everything inside. Because in today's world, 21st century, who am I to change what he did back then? You understand? So if he talks about this sword is like that, the quality of this sword is like that, and then I come to this part, I leave it out. In my humble opinion, it's wrong. And it's okay, what did he mean exactly? In archery, I translate, now one of them says, before shooting, you need to wash yourself and be prepared for praying to God. So he describes how to wash, like they do in Wuzu. Because if you don't, you're not going to hit the enemy. Of course, from a scientific point of view today, how can washing yourself have an effect on your archery technique, right? Of course it doesn't. But I'm a scientist. I know it doesn't. But still, it doesn't allow me to leave out this part. Because back then people were different. They believed in these things, right? And I need to, as an academic, I need exactly to say what this guy believed in, not through my lens of today. Oh, this is superstition. Oh, that's superstition. And this gives me an opportunity to understand the mechanics of those people. What did they really like? What did they really look at? What did they really want? And give them a cultural profile and try to compare. So that's the whole thing. That's what I love.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I always, I think, when you talk about mission and preserving Persian culture, that's a worthy cause, and I can see the motivation is from within. And it's,
Thank you very much.
I feel like my biggest complaint, I was researching ancient Rome, ancient Greece, there's plenty on those, ancient Egypt, but then there's like a gap in ancient Persia that there's so much history that is just not out there or available easily that needs to be, because history, without history we don't have future.
No, we don't have future. I mean, I need to just say something maybe. Huh, it is not maybe the place to talk about that. My apologies if it's not, but there is um, one of my our colleagues. He's German, very good professor. I forgot his name. I don't know him personally, but I read many of his work. He writes mostly in German, but some in English. He teaches at University of Regensburg, and his area of expertise is cognitive warfare. So cognitive warfare, as we all know, is before I start a war or warfare, I win the battle in the mind of people. So if I make them believe I'm invincible, right, and keep saying it everywhere, you first make fun of me, said Manusha is not invincible. He's a human being. He's going to die. How can he be invincible? But you go and talk to someone, says Manusha is invincible. So come on, he's not. He's come on, forget about him. He just talks. Another guy says that. You keep hearing it. You put on the news, invincible Manusha, invincible, invincible, whatever. Even if you don't believe in it, because it's superstition, it's propaganda. Something inside you changes. Do you understand? And if you want to confront this, if you believe in it, willingly or unwillingly, consciously or subconsciously, changes your mechanics of fighting. And cognitive warfare, which is practiced, they do it on a large scale through media, through social media, through education. And this cognitive warfare is one of the areas I'm very involved to, right? So they try to tell you this. Now, I'll give you an example. Professor Farrokh, Kaveh Farrokh, our colleague from Canada, I've been also publishing with Kaveh for many years, right? Another researcher we have very good experiences publishing. So greetings to him. And then he said something very nice. There is not 1 month which goes by that at least 10 books in Europe every month and 10 books in North America is published on the Roman Empire and the war machinery, Greek Empire and the efficiency of Greek army. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're into cognitive warfare and you can read between the lines, you understand what's going on. Listen, the invincible Roman infantry, the best infantry in the world, judged by whom? Well, Parthians decimated them many times. The best infantry in the world. You hear me? But Persians lost many battles. Persians lost this, lost that. Military history is always depends the way I look at it in cognitive warfare. I can make the inhabitants of my country believe in the military power of our country, never talk about our defeats, always talk about our victories, and keep saying it again and again, again and again, again and again. Or I can talk about the defeats of the others and they make them believe to say that. And they always talk about the defeats of themselves, their defeat. There is no single country, I don't know of anyone on this planet Earth who could always win. They win and they lose. They win and they lose. The question is, how do people share? Now, if you can make this sharing everywhere, so I give you one example again. Roman military machine was very strong, but against Parthians, they failed. Sometimes they won. I know some battles, but basically they had no match against horse archers or heavy cavalry of the Parthians again and again. They talk about the Byzantine Rome. They were very strong. Sometimes they won against Sasanians, sometimes they lost against Sasanians. And also, especially Professor Fry from the United States, late Professor Fry from Harvard, Iranian Studies professor, said that. He said, but when Greece and Persia confronted each other, no one talks about 220 years of world empire. Even Dr. Henry Kissinger said this was the first largest, strongest world empire, Persian Empire, the Achaemenid period. No one talks about that, but everyone talks about the defeat of the empire by Alexander. And Alexander, admittedly, is always Alexander the Great. Okay, to our Greek friends, I'm not taking it away from him. Great by which standards? By whom? This is called cognitive warfare, which is really widespread in the realm of. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, countries need to practice that. But if you have, I always teach my students to have like intellectual self-defense, to think about it, what's going on. I'm not trying to say this culture is bad, that culture is good, but these type of things teach us to understand the mechanics of these type of things. And now coming back to us, because our culture, in my opinion, have been, as you mentioned it correctly, Ricardo, have been under attack, right? Unfairly, I have to say. But the message is Iran, Persia has a huge, huge culture and contributions to the world. You said it was yourself. We both know it. Look at the Iranian Americans in the United States. Look what they have contributed to the United States of America, haven't they, Ricardo? Look at the
Very much.
highly you know that, right? The same is in Europe. We are not that organized, unfortunately, in Europe, but we have also many doctors, many highly educated people in Europe of Iranians. And I was in Australia and New Zealand only once, but the same there if you go there. So this is something which is also a Persian heritage, I would say.
Yeah, I have a couple stats that I can share with you. Yeah, so
Sure.
Iranian Americans ranking U.S. community the best immigrants USA has ever inherited, according to this article, and are the most. There's a 1.9 million Iranian Americans live in the U.S. The largest concentration is in L.A. The majority of Iranian born had a bachelor's degree or higher. Let's see here. What is most striking? The majority of these 12,000 plus professors that are Persian serve in the top 200 of the 4,000 universities and colleges in the nation. There are nearly 15,000 physicians of Iranian heritage working in the United States who have their own practice or work in medical institution. The Small Business Administration recently conducted a study that found Iranian immigrants among the top 20 immigrant groups with the highest rate of business ownership, contributing substantially to the U.S. economy. So, there's just a lot of different information out there that just is not being shared, and I think it's beautiful to celebrate our history and culture and what makes it so special. I think sometimes recent politics and wars sometimes can't erase 20 years can't erase 5,000 years of civilization.
Yes, absolutely.
The drop in the ocean. It's just a period. At some point, if they won't even 2,000 years from now, they probably will focus on the others. But it's incredible. I was in the British Museum and I saw the Cyrus cylinder, and just to see it there, it was just incredible.
Incredible.
It was the first human bill of human rights. It actually supposedly inspired the U.S. Constitution, Bill of Rights. I was reading the other day.
Just to give one example, and this is maybe interesting for us because you mentioned this Cyrus cylinder, which also some colleagues unfairly started to attack that in academia, but I don't want to go into that. But important is when we have Cyrus cylinder, when we know from inscriptions that men and women were both paid back then, when we know that Achaemenids did not have slaves back then, right? Achaemenids had human rights. These guys didn't. Nothing remain. Why is Iran always depicted that way? I think we know the answer, right? I think we know the answer. And this is something very, very sad, really. It really saddens me, especially to see sometimes as we discussed it as well, like movies like 300 and things like that, right? So, this is really something really unfair, to to show and to think. But well, that's the way life is, right? Yeah, that's right. Ricardo, what are your future plans?
There's a lot of future plans, but I have many goals in many levels, personally, professionally, and family and business. But I'm starting a family very soon, so that's a top priority. But I think my future plans will include service, family, and I think they say that the best way to learn is when you teach others. You actually have scientific proof that it has the highest retention. But um, giving giving the new generation of leaders the tools they need to be successful, so we don't end up in the situation we're currently in. Can you believe, with all the advancements and so many things and so many positive contributions we can be doing to society, yet it seems we're going backward, and it's a real shame. So being involved in education is a major part of shaping the future. Really, I have a group of historians. We have about 1,000 strong that are sharing different histories and learning the not so popular histories. Everyone's into the Rome and Greece, of course, but there's so many other interesting histories out there, and so much you can learn from the Native Americans, the Aztecs, the Incas. The Japanese have a beautiful history as well. And I think we both share that common interest of Japanese martial arts. So,
Yes.
I think it's the work, the mission is never done. It always continues. There's always something
Yes.
else. So I guess what would be my true purpose is in help others and contribute to society and give. When you give, there are other things you give and you lose, but when you give love, it's infinite. The more you give, the more you have. There's no end. It's infinite. There's no limit.
Is Ricardo De La Fuente going to run again for Congress or Senate?
At the right time, I may run again. Absolutely, if I see the right opportunity, wherever I can best contribute and to serve,
Yes.
that's where I'll be. I think, the more sometimes can somebody's got to do it, and more of us need to do it. More of us need to get involved. More of us need to serve people with the talent, the heart, the values, to set the right example. It's incredible words, and I was thinking about what you said about writing. Death is a stealth motivator. We are here limited time, so we might as well make the best of it and leave a legacy, of a positive contribution. This is. Some people may be negative, but today it's probably one of the most exciting times to be alive.
Yes.
You're in Germany. I'm in Uruguay. We're having this conversation. People are listening from all around the world on the channel. So hello to everybody. And when you greet your in Farsi, someone really introduced himself once in the class at Harvard Kennedy School, and they said, "In my language, salam means peace." Even the way most of the Arab world and Persians, when you say hello, salam means peace.
Peace. Yes, that's true.
That's what we
Peace.
need. I think the ultimate goal is peace. And
Yes.
peace is brought by education, friendship, understanding, having a positive communication, maybe the cognitive warfare, but on the positive side. Maybe instead of cognitive warfare, cognitive peacemaking. That's what we need. We need peace. We need peace with ourselves, peace with our neighbors, peace around the world. Because we have other challenges that we need to confront, and we need to use our resources and our energy to advance society, not take it backwards.
I really will never forget what you just said. This is something which I will take with me. Thank you for saying that. Instead of cognitive warfare, we need cognitive peace or peacemaking. Beautifully said, Ricardo. One of the most beautiful sentences I've ever heard. Thank you for saying that. Absolutely true. Thank you. It was lovely. I would never forget that. Oh, very good. Every day you learn something new. Excellent. Thank you very much, Ricardo. Do you wish to share something else with our viewers or something?
No, I'm just grateful that one of those early mornings when I'm doing my research on history and martial arts that we were able to connect, and that's the beauty of technology, right? Rather
Yes.
to connect and share passion, and I hope to have the opportunity to meet you in the coming months and host
Sure.
you in California
Thank you very
or
much.
Uruguay, and let's see what we can do to preserve 5,000 years of civilization that
Thank you.
we're very quick. Some people are quick to forget, but it should not be forgotten. You know,
Thank you
as
very much. I wish you a nice day and hope to have you back on our channel very often, Ricardo. We would be happy to have you.
all right. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.
Bye bye.